There are 7 daily exercises piano students should be practicing that's going to contribute the most to their long-term success. And of course, I'm going to break down what these exercises are, what the benefits are, and how to practice them. The first exercise we're going to talk about ear training, which is being able to hear the difference between 2 chords or 2 notes. And the best place to start with ear training is with chords. Hearing the difference between a major chord, sounds bright and happy, and a minor chord, which sounds dark and sad. So for example, what do you think that is? Well, it sounds dark and sad, so it is a minor chord. After you're able to hear the difference between those 2 chords, I would add in what we call diminished chords into the mix. They have a tense and crunchy sound, and then augmented chords. So really it's about hearing the difference between those 4 chords to start out with, but then not only the difference between chords, but the difference between notes, namely intervals. So every interval, which is the distance between 2 notes, so if I have a C and a D, that's a second, 1, 2, and if you play them back to back, it has a certain sound to it. And the way we find out what interval is being played is we associate common songs that we know with the interval. And here's exactly what I mean by that. So I just played a second, and specifically I played a major second. Now, do we know any songs that begin with a major second? How about Happy Birthday? So if it sounds like the beginning of Happy Birthday, you know that you have a major second. There's also something called a minor second, and let's see if we could have any songs we can use for the minor second. And you may be able to tell already, I am, of course, playing the theme song to Jaws as Jaws is coming up. The shark, is coming up to the boat ready to eat them. So minor second is Jaws, major second is Happy Birthday, and that's just an example of how we associate songs that we know with these intervals to be able to tell what they are, and there's songs for each and every interval. I'm not going to go over all of it today because we have a lot more to cover with exercises, but if you want a whole ear training lesson, let me know in the comments. I would love to hear from you. Now you may be asking, Tim, how do I practice ear training? Well, you go to musictheory.net, the place we always go, and you actually want to scroll down to where it says ear training, and you want to start out with maybe chords and look at the 4 chords that are listed: major, minor, augmented, and diminished, the ones I just told you about. Geez, it's almost like I know what I'm talking about here. So first you want to select those 4 types of chords. Don't select any of the crazy ones, and you can start by practicing your chords there. And you can also use it to practice your intervals. For example, let's see if we can hear this interval. Oh, did you hear that? Sounded like Happy Birthday. So how much you want to bet that that's a major second? Boom. See, I didn't let you down. You can apply what we just talked about to those intervals. The second type of exercise, this one is less neglected. This is scales. And a scale is when you're putting all of the notes that exist within a key, starting from the tonic note, ending with the tonic note, and any of the scale notes in between. So what that means is that if you're in the key of C, your tonic is C. You're playing from C to C. And any of the scale notes in between means that if the key of C has 0 sharp, 0 flats, that just means that you're hitting all of the natural or the white keys in this case. So if you're playing in the key of C, these are all of the notes that exist in the key of C. And that makes scales wonderful to practice because when you're playing a scale in a certain key, it helps you understand much better the layout of that key. For example, the key of D major, I know because I've been practicing so long, has 2 sharps, F and C. And by playing the scale, I know where on the piano specifically those 2 sharps are located. Another example, the key of B has 5 sharps, and when I play the B major scale, I know that when I'm playing not only these sharp notes, but I have these 2 or 3 natural notes as well, and I know the locations of those. So please practice your scales. And also, scales are great introductory practice into finger crossings. Since as I'm playing the scale, I'm going to have to cross certain fingers underneath to be able to complete the scale. And the crossings happen differently, at different times rather, between the right hand and left hand. So when you practice your scales, you are much more familiar with that. And if you want to learn all your scales, I highly recommend this book right here. It's called Scales, Chords, Arpeggios, and Cadences. It's by the Alfred Adult Library, and you can, of course, find it on Amazon. I'm going to have to remember to put a link for you in the description. And this book is just awesome because not only does it give you everything you're going to need to practice, it gives you the order in which you're going to need to practice it. So the first few pages kind of introduce you to like what a scale is, what a tetrachord is, which is just half the scale at a time. You know, tetra, 4. You know, you ever play Tetris where you get the 4 columns of colored blocks and then they go away when you get them? Anyways. Going through these scales here, and it's teaching you all about like major thirds, different intervals, some of the stuff that we just talked about. But the great thing is they give you the scales and everything. Here's where it really begins. They give you the scales, arpeggios, triads, dominant seventh arpeggios. So you get everything around that key that you're going to need to know. And then they teach you the next key that you're going to want to learn in order. So after the key of C, you want to learn the key of G because it has 1 sharp. So everything you need and the order you're going to want to learn it in. Next type of exercise you can't forget are arpeggios. So let me play it right here. Now what did I just play? Well, I played a C major triad, 3-note chord, major chord. You know, sounds bright and happy. They said instead of playing all the notes together, I play them one at a time and just hit the tonic note C once again. And arpeggios are really helpful because we're going to see them in our music all the time. I'll show you an example here in just a second, but they're also, once again, really good at finger crosses and coordination between both hands because you're doing finger crossings here, but they are more spread out than what you would anticipate with a scale, because in a scale, all the notes are next to each other. In an arpeggio, the notes are what's called skipping over every other note, and it's just a different type of finger cross you'll have to get used to. Here is the opening to Moonlight Sonata. And you may notice from watching my playing that I'm hitting a lot of 3 notes right in a row. See that? And then it just repeats and repeats and repeats. Well, guess what that is? That is a C sharp minor arpeggio, and we happen to be in the key of C sharp minor. And by knowing what that is, I know right away what these notes are. I don't have to read that scary ledger line note with my thumb because I know that it's an inverted chord and one of those notes has to be C sharp. Remember how in the opening I said that ear training was the most neglected piano exercise there was? Well, I lied to you. The most neglected and important, are you listening? Important exercises you can learn on piano is sight reading, actually. The ear training is a close second. Both of these are highly neglected. I went years and years and years without practicing sight reading, and let me tell you what sight reading is. Sight reading is being able to play through a passage of music, usually a line or two. Sometimes it can be a little bit longer, but being able to play through it from sight, having never read it before. And it is one of the most useful skills because the better you get at sight reading, the faster it will be to learn new pieces and get them to sound like something. So, you know, for example, if I'm learning Für Elise, you know, and I'm bad at sight reading, there'll be missed notes, and it takes forever to get it to sound like something. I think you've all been there. And with sight reading, it'll be a lot faster for notes to come together and start sounding the way they're supposed to. Here are some sight reading tips. Are you ready? Sight reading tip number 1 is to find pieces or exercises that are a little bit below your current playing level. So if you're used to playing Beethoven sonatas, you're not going to sight read Beethoven sonatas. You might actually sight read something more like Für Elise, which is just a level or 2 below that. Sight reading tip number 2 is that you want to analyze before you play. There is no time limit unless you're doing this for an audition or something, but even then they give you plenty of time. You want to take a minute or two to really analyze the notes even before your fingers hit the piano. So for example, if I just started playing this without, analyzing it, I'd immediately be hitting wrong notes and it would sound horrible because I didn't analyze first. And specifically what I would notice is that there are 2 treble clefs up there. So obviously if I wasn't aware of that ahead of time, I'd be playing all the wrong notes. Some other things I'm on the lookout for include the time signature. And what is the time signature of this example? Well, it's right here. That's C, right? Not a lot of people, a lot of people do know what this is. I don't mention it on the channel as much as I should, but that C there, that stands for common time. And what's the most common time signature? Hopefully you said 4/4. So C, common time, is 4/4. Also looking out for key signature, so I don't see any sharps or flats in the key signature, so nothing to worry about there. And then the other thing I'm going to look out for even before I start playing is starting hand position. Very important. I'm seeing that they're both treble clef up here. And, and then maybe I'm going to look forward a little bit to see if there's any staccatos or anything. Oh, and then I do spot something at the end here. Do you see it? It's right there at the end. It is the repeat sign. So I'm going to have to be careful to actually play through that line twice. I may even look a little further ahead. Notice that there are some sharps going on here. And then there's a natural right there. So I'm looking out for clefs, time signatures, key signatures, maybe some accidental sharps or flats in the middle there. Anything that you're going to have to look out for, look at it ahead of time, and it's going to help you play 10 times better. You don't have to jump into the keys. In fact, I really, really discourage you from doing that. Even if you're just playing music regularly and you're not sight reading, take a minute to really think about what you're doing. And then the last tip I have for you for these is to play through the exercise once as a genuine sight read. And then say you make some mistakes along the way, maybe like mark out, where those happened, and then play through it again and see if you can correct as many mistakes as possible. Now, I have a great resource for sight reading. You may be wondering, how do you practice sight reading? So I go to pianoexercises.org. You're going to have to type it in. I can't link it to you. They have some sort of weird bot protection on this website. But anyway, you can click on any of the composers you want. But Carl Czerny has something I think that's pretty special for sight reading. And it's this 100 progressive studies that we just looked at. I just clicked on it. And the great thing about this is it starts out nice and simple, and then each one gets a little bit more complicated, and before long you're playing things that are more and more complex. And it's kind of what I said. You want to start out easier than your current playing level and build up to it. If what I showed you is too much for you to sight read, which it may be if you're new to sight reading, I highly recommend, and you may want to check this out anyway, check out this book on Amazon, Improve Your Sight Reading. It's by Paul Harris. It's an 8-level course. They're not very long, but the great thing is that if you get level 1, it's starting you out really from basic stuff. I think it's like half notes and quarter notes, things like that. And each book presents a new level and a new challenge, because a big key of sight reading is starting out small and working your way up. You do not want to try sight reading things that are too difficult, because you're going to get confused. It's going to, get frustrating, and then you might quit, which would be awful. Okay, the number 5, I think we're on, exercise that you want to be practicing daily and going over is chords, and really becoming familiar with how chords are spelled. And I don't mean C-H-O-R-D, of course. Do you like that joke? Maybe I should stop saying it. But anyways, what I mean by chord spelling is the 3 or 4 notes that make up a chord. Because believe it or not, C, E, G makes up a C major chord. It doesn't matter whether the order of the notes is inverted, E, G, C, still C major, G, C, E, still C major. Those three notes basically define a C major chord, and you want to become familiar with those spellings super easy, super quick rather. So A major, A, C sharp, E, A minor, A, C, E. So I would become familiar with all your major chords, all your minor chords, all your diminished chords, and all your augmented chords to start out. And then I would branch out into seventh chords after that. Now you may be thinking, how do you figure out and practice all these chords, Tim? You kind of told us a lot. Well, if you go to Google and you type in piano chord chart, there's one really good one on the School of Rock, but there's a bunch of them. And just pick the one that works best for you. So see here, even on this website, these chords are all spelled out for you. And I don't mean C-H-O-R-T, right, guys? I mean the three notes. I'm going to stop saying that joke, I promise. The three notes that make up each chord. And you want to go through this list. And then they also have the chart for you, which like highlights like, oh, there's an A minor chord, A-C-E. Looking up at that top right. So I recommend theschoolofrock.com. Just type in piano chord chart. And then any of the other websites and any of the chord charts, they're all really good. I've looked at pretty much all of them. So look at one of these. I recommend maybe spending 5 minutes each practice session just seeing if you can memorize a new chord, right? You might not be able to memorize them all at once, but the way I like to do it is this. I like to bunch chords by their common characteristics. For example, with major chords, it only goes for major, there's only three chords that use all three white keys. And those are C major, F major, and G major. And then for major chords, there's only three chords that have a sharp in the middle, and those are D, E, and A. You can think Drug Enforcement Administration, that's the way I remember it. And the ones with flats on the outside are D flat, E flat, and A flat. So the opposite. Remember, D, E, A had the sharp in the middle, and then D flat, E flat, A flat has the flats on the outside. So that's how I recommend you start memorizing them, link them together by common characteristics. It makes it 10 times easier. I'm not even messing around with you. A cadence is a common pattern of chords, also called a chord progression, that's used throughout music. And you're going to see these all the time, so you have to know about them. And guess what? Remember this book title? Scales, chords. Ooh, there's chords in here too. Arpeggios, and what? Cadences. So the cadences are in here for you to learn. That's why I highly recommend picking up this book. It has a lot of the things that we talked about today in there. We only have 2 exercises to go, and then we have a bonus tip at the end that's really going to tie everything together. But before we do those, I just want to say a quick thank you to all those that have supported the channel over the years, from the regular viewers to people that sign up for courses over on my website, pianolessonsontheweb.com, from the channel members and even the mods. Without your help, we wouldn't have been able to reach as many students as we've had. I just want to take a minute to say thank you. Okay, we're on the final 2 exercises. This one you probably not heard about before, because I kind of came up with my own wordage for, you probably heard the concept, but you may not know the words. Are you ready for it? This is called rhythm charting, and this is so important because it helps chart out where you are with your rhythms. And let me show you what I mean. So say we have this measure right here, and I'm really struggling lining up the left hand notes down here with the rhythm that we have up there, which is a common problem, right? And what I like to do is I like to do rhythm charting to figure out where these notes are supposed to line up. So the first thing I do is I find the smallest note value that I can, and that is going to be these 16th notes. And hopefully you remember how to count 16th notes. If you don't, we are basically taking quarter notes, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you subdivide those into eighth notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then for 16th notes, we do 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. So that is what we are using in this particular case. So knowing that, I like to chart out where the primary beats are. Those are the beats 1, 2, 3, or 4. If you're in 4/4, if you're only in 3/4, it'll be beats 1, 2, and 3. If you're in 2/4, it's just beats 1 and 2. So what we're doing here is we're in 4/4, and I want to find out where each of these 4 beats are. And the great news is that the 16th notes tell us this. So if you don't know, you see how these 16th notes are all beamed together? Well, in rhythm, a lot of times when notes are beamed together, see how they're beamed together 4 and 4, like this one's beamed over there like that. That equals 1 beat. So this makes our job super easy because now I know our beats are here, 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 and here. Those are our 4 beats. And we actually have 1 E and 2 E. Excuse my bad handwriting here. 3 E and 4 E. And so that's where all of our subdivided beats are. And our goal now is to line up the notes down there with the 1 E and a 2 E and is up top. One easy shortcut to do this, now you're going to have to check your work, is to draw a vertical line where each of these beats hits, because it's going to tell you which note it's going to line up with. Now this works if the print and the edit are correct and they line up the notes correctly. You have to check your work because sometimes things are not going to print correctly, or they're just going to mess it up and it's not going to quite line up the way you would think. So this only works some of the time, but it is an easy way for beginners to tell where those notes line up. And particularly they line up, so here we have with beat 1, right? You see how that lines up? This one right here hits with and. This one hits with 3. And this one is going to hit on the and of 4. So it's going to be counted like this. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. And by drawing those vertical lines, I could line them up just perfect. Now, like I said, you're going to have to check your work, and here's how you do that. You have to know what all the note durations are. So this first one over here, see it? Bing. That is a dotted quarter note. And how many beats are in a dotted quarter note? Well, 1.5. So that is going to actually take up, this dotted quarter note is going to take up 1 E and a, because that's an entire beat. And it's going to take up 2 E, because that's the half of the next beat. And that lines up with what we were talking about, because the next would hit on and right there. And that's only an 8th note, so that's going to be this note right here. 8th note, so it's going to hit over for 2/16. And if you're confused right now, don't worry, I have a lot of rhythm lessons that can catch you up. This dotted quarter right here is going to take up all of 3 E and a, so that's 1 beat, and then 4 E, which is the half of the other. So everything does check out. You might have to just kind of figure out, how many of each of the 16th notes the bottom notes take up. But I highly recommend you do this. I know it took a while for me to show it to you the first time, but trust me, you can get lightning fast at this, and eventually you can even start doing it in your head. But I highly recommend you go through your music, find those measures that you're always messing up, right? And you're like, oops, I'm just gonna keep making the same mistake over and over again. Find those measures, and I want you to rhythm chart them out, chart out where the 16th notes are, where the left hand meets up with the right hand, and see if you can clean up those. And I recommend spending about 5 minutes each practice session rhythm charting. You don't need to do the whole piece. Just do the tricky measures that you've been neglecting and that you've been messing up. We have only one more exercise to go, the one that you need to be practicing, and I'm willing to bet you haven't heard about this one either. And this one is called rhythm dictation. Rhythm dictation is when me or a teacher plays a rhythm and then you're going to have to write it down. So for example, if I count out, I'm going to count a measure of 4/4, and then I'm going to play something, and then you're going to have to tell me what I played. So are you ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. And what do you think it was? I said 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So the first note hit for 2 beats, 1, 2, and then I hit 3, 4. So if you were dictating this on paper, you would write half note, quarter, quarter. Pretty easy, right? Well, it gets a lot more complicated because sometimes the teacher will play a whole passage of music and you're going to have to really figure out, what's being played. But you don't need to make it that complicated. What I recommend you do is there are actually rhythmic dictation things online you can use. I'll show you one in a second where it will play back or play a rhythm to you and you're going to have to write it down. This skill is super important with developing your ears. And it just helps on so many levels because you're going to be able to hear rhythms now and be like, oh, this is an eighth note pattern. Oh, this is a dotted 16th pattern, or oh, there's syncopation is going on. It's going to put you a lot more in tune with not only what these rhythms look like on paper, but what they actually sound like when you're playing out the rhythm. Okay, you can find a rhythmic dictation exercise on Tone Savvy, ToneSavvy. It's up there at the top. You can see it right here. All I did was type in rhythmic dictation into Google, and then I found Tone Savvy from here. Now, let's practice this and see what we got. So what this is going to do is this is going to play a measure or two of rhythm, and we're going to have to reproduce it by hitting these notes down here. So that's the metronome, and here it's going to start. Now you can play it as many times as you want, but I heard starting out bump, bump, bump. Oh, let's play it again. Sometimes you have to listen to it a few times. Here we go. So I heard bump, bump, ba, bump, bump. And let's listen again, see if I can get the rest of it this time. I would try to give yourself maybe like 3 or 4 playthroughs. Okay, I heard bump, 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 bump. Maybe a half note. Ba, 2/8. Nope. Let me listen again. Oh, I know what it was. It ended with ba, bump, bump. So long, short, short, which would be quarter, eighth, eighth. So now you maybe have heard me say short, long a little bit during that, especially towards the end. And that's the way I listen to these to be able to hear. So let's do one more and I'll tell you where the short, long comes in. Here we go. So what I heard was long, long. So I'm splitting up these note values into long and short, basically. So long is actually a half note, 1, 2, and then long is just a quarter note, and then short, short is going to be the eighth notes. And that's how I kind of listen for this stuff to be able to get it. Now let's listen one more time. So it's going to be long, right? Long. Okay, so I heard long, long, another long. Oh, maybe I couldn't remember it. Bum, bum, bump, bump, bum. Okay, there we go. Sometimes you got to use your memory a little bit. But as you can see, I just kind of interpret things as long and short, associate them with the quarter notes, eighth notes, whole notes, and hopefully that will help you get started. This, again, is on a website called ToneSavvy.com, and this exercise is called the rhythmic dictation. So here's the bonus tip that I promised. So we talked a lot about rhythm in this lesson. Remember the rhythm charting and stuff? And I kind of went over some of those topics pretty quick. Well, I want you to watch this lesson next. It's the most common rhythm patterns you're going to find in your music. If you were confused on the rhythm in this lesson, or at least some of it, this is going to catch you up all the way. So please watch this lesson next. It's been your piano teacher, Tim, and I'll see you next time.